Sit back, relax, and welcome to Reading Hours. Today's book is The Witcher, Blood of Elves by Andrzej Sapkowski. Please let us know in the comments from where you are watching, or if there is a book you want us to summarize in future. In Blood of Elves, Andrzej Sapkowski deepens the rich and complex world of the Witcher saga, where magic, politics, and personal relationships intertwine to shape the fate of its characters. This first full novel of the series follows Geralt of Rivia, the famed Witcher, as he navigates the treacherous world that is both his battlefield and his home. With its intricate plot, morally ambiguous characters, and intense political dynamics, Blood of Elves continues to explore the darker sides of human nature, fate, and destiny. The novel is not just an action-packed fantasy tale. It weaves together themes of family, identity, and the choices that define us, all while setting the stage for the events that will unfold in future installments. As the first book to focus on the growing power of the mysterious young sorceress Ciri, Blood of Elves presents a turning point in the series. Ciri's unique powers and the pursuit of those who seek to control her become central to the conflict. However, this is also a story about mentorship, as Geralt takes on a guiding role in Ciri's life, trying to protect her from a world that would exploit her. With its vivid world building, deep emotional resonance, and philosophical reflections, Blood of Elves is not just a continuation of a fantasy epic. It is an exploration of the very nature of power, love, and responsibility. Let's dive into the world of Blood of Elves, where nothing is ever as it seems, and where the price of power is often more than one can afford. The world of Blood of Elves opens in a time of deep uncertainty, where war, magic, and ancient prophecies collide. At the heart of this turbulent world stands Geralt of Rivia, a solitary witcher, famed for his monster-slaying abilities and his moral code. He is no hero in the traditional sense. Instead, he's a man bound by the duties of his profession, seeking to maintain a delicate balance in a world that often seems intent on tearing itself apart. Geralt is a figure marked by contradictions, a mutant, trained to kill beasts and protect humans, yet distanced from both. But as the story unfolds, it becomes clear that his fate is inextricably linked to something far more complicated and far-reaching than the work he's accustomed to. Geralt's world is irrevocably changed when he takes a young girl, Ciri, under his care. Ciri, the granddaughter of the late Queen Callanth of Cintra, has already endured the violence of war and the loss of her family. Her parents are dead, and her kingdom has been destroyed, leaving her to survive in a world that doesn't care about her. The child's arrival marks the beginning of an incredibly important journey, both for Ciri and Geralt. Though they are bound by destiny, neither fully understands the implications of their relationship, and this mysterious connection is at the heart of the narrative's unfolding. Ciri is not an ordinary child. She is special, even more so than Geralt initially realizes. Geralt has long been aware of the world's deep magic, but Ciri's powers are of a different nature altogether. Her bloodline links her directly to some of the most powerful forces on the continent, including the ancient Elves, who have long since retreated into myth. Her fate, steeped in prophecy and legend, is something that will either save or destroy the world, depending on whose hands shape it. She is more than a princess or a noble. It's clear that Ciri has the potential to change the entire balance of power. And yet, she is only a girl, caught between the expectations of others and her own burgeoning sense of self. Geralt brings Ciri to Kaer Morhen, the ancient keep where witchers are trained, in the hope of protecting her from those who might seek to control her. It is here that Geralt's role shifts from protector to mentor. While the witchers of Kaer Morhen have their own brutal ways, their training is essential for Ciri's survival in a world filled with danger. Geralt himself is a master of the sword. And although his work usually involves hunting monsters, he sees in Ciri something more, a destiny that cannot be avoided. It's here that the tension between duty and personal feelings begins to take shape. Geralt's protective instincts are undeniable, but he is not a father. He is a warrior, a man accustomed to isolation, whose every instinct tells him that fate is something to be resisted, not embraced. But Ciri is no ordinary child, and neither is the world they live in. She is marked for something greater, whether Geralt likes it or not. The more time he spends with her, the more he recognizes that she is not just someone to be protected, but someone who will inevitably shape the future of the world. Ciri's arrival at Kaer Morhen is not only about survival. It is the beginning of a series of events that will alter the fate of entire nations, the balance of power in the world, and the role of magic in that world. She becomes a central figure, not only in Geralt's life, but also in the wider political landscape. While Geralt tries to train her in the ways of combat, survival, and witcher techniques, the world outside Kaer Morhen begins to close in. The northern kingdoms are embroiled in conflict with the Nilfgaardian Empire, whose forces grow stronger with each passing day. The political intrigue surrounding Ciri's bloodline is both far-reaching and dangerous, as her status as the granddaughter of the late Queen Calanthe makes her a target for anyone seeking to control her. Her very existence is a reminder of the shifting tides of power, and those who understand her significance are relentless in their pursuit. Ciri's training is fraught with difficulty, as the Witchers put her through intense physical and mental challenges. She begins to understand the gravity of her situation. Geralt's role as her protector, though crucial, is not enough to shield her from the complexities of the world she is inheriting. The violence and treachery that run rampant throughout the land are reflected in the harshness of the training she undergoes. Yet she quickly learns to adapt. There is an inherent strength in Ciri, an inner fire that both intrigues and frightens those around her. She does not simply accept the world as it is. Instead, she challenges it, questioning the roles that others have cast her into. The bond between her and Geralt grows as they navigate this dangerous new world together, but it is a bond laced with uncertainty. In the meantime, the world beyond Kaer Morhen continues its descent into chaos. The Nilfgaardian Empire's expansion threatens the northern kingdoms, and the political machinations that take place behind closed doors are only part of the greater conflict brewing. Magic itself, once an enigmatic force in the world, is becoming more volatile. Geralt knows that Ciri's powers are unlike any he's encountered before, but what he does not know is how her powers will manifest, or how they will affect the fragile world they live in. There are whispers of prophecy, ancient and cryptic, that Ciri's blood will either save or destroy the world. The prophecy's weight hangs heavily on her shoulders, but she remains a girl, trying to make sense of a world that seems determined to tear her apart. Geralt's primary concern is protecting Ciri, but he understands that their connection, both familial and fated, runs deeper than mere protection. He cannot deny the growing bond between them. He is her protector, but he is also something more. He is, in many ways, her only anchor in a world where everyone is seeking to use her for their own ends. Yet even as Geralt takes on this fatherly role, he is torn by his own internal struggles. He is not a man accustomed to opening up or allowing others to depend on him, and Ciri's presence forces him to confront feelings he has long buried. This is no simple quest for survival. It is a journey of self-discovery for Geralt, Ciri, and everyone around them. The journey that begins in the safety of Kaer Morhen is but the first step in what will become a much larger, much darker tale, where the fate of the world hinges on the choices made by those who have the power to shape it. In the wake of Geralt's decision to take Ciri into his care, their lives become increasingly intertwined with the larger conflicts shaping the world. Although Kaer Morhen offers them a brief respite from the chaos beyond its stone walls, it is clear that both Geralt and Ciri cannot remain isolated forever. The political upheaval in the northern kingdoms is intensifying, and Nilfgaard's expansion continues to threaten the stability of the continent. As Geralt seeks to protect Ciri, he knows that the safety of the Witcher Keep will not hold forever. The time has come for them to step out of the sanctuary that Kaer Morhen offers and face the world in all its complexity. The first challenge comes in the form of Ciri's growing awareness of the importance of her bloodline. She begins to understand that she is not just a helpless girl in need of protection, but a pivotal figure in the power struggles between kingdoms and empires. Though still a child, Ciri's instincts are sharp, and she quickly realizes that the forces surrounding her are not merely concerned with her well-being. They are after her for her potential. Her lineage, tied to the fallen kingdom of Sintra, makes her an object of both fascination and fear. Her connection to the powerful Elves, an ancient race that has long since faded from prominence, is something that many of the continent's rulers covet. Ciri may not yet understand the full scope of her importance, but it is clear that her fate is inextricably tied to the future of the world itself. Meanwhile, Geralt is caught in the uneasy balance of being both a protector and a teacher. His role as a father figure to Ciri is not something he ever anticipated, and he remains conflicted about the responsibility placed upon him. His life has always been one of detachment, shaped by his training as a witcher. Witchers are meant to remain neutral, to act as hired swords who take no sides in the conflicts of men. But Ciri's presence in his life forces Geralt to reconsider his role in a world that is anything but neutral. Though he has long prided himself on being a loner, the bond he shares with Ciri is undeniable, and he finds himself willing to fight not just for survival, but for something greater, something he can no longer define in the terms he once did. To help her navigate the dangers of the world outside Kaer Morhen, Geralt begins to introduce Ciri to the ways of the Witchers, preparing her for the harsh realities of survival. She is trained in combat, in magic, and in the strict discipline that defines a Witcher's life. Geralt's methods are tough, unforgiving, and often harsh, but he knows that the world will show no mercy, and that Ciri must be ready to face it on her own terms. The bond between them grows as they train together, with with Ciri pushing herself to keep up with Geralt's rigorous expectations. But there is more to her training than physical endurance. Ciri's innate magical abilities begin to surface, and it becomes increasingly clear that she possesses a raw power that even Geralt cannot fully understand. This emerging power is both a blessing and a curse. Ciri's magical abilities are not like those of other mages, and they seem to manifest without rhyme or reason. At times, she struggles to control her magic, feeling both overwhelmed and afraid of what she might unleash. The Witchers have little experience with magic of this nature, and they are unsure of how to guide her. Geralt, too, is out of his depth when it comes to teaching Ciri to control her magical abilities, and this uncertainty adds a layer of tension to their already complex relationship. However, Geralt remains committed to Ciri's well-being, and he is determined to help her harness her power, no matter the cost. As Ciri's training progresses, the world outside grows ever more dangerous. The political landscape becomes even more volatile, with the threat of war looming on the horizon. Nilfgaard's ambitions are clear, and their forces are steadily encroaching upon the northern kingdoms. The battle for control of the continent is intensifying, and Ciri's presence becomes an increasingly important factor in the outcome of this conflict. Rulers, mercenaries, and mages alike begin to take notice of her, each with their own intentions for her future. In this climate of political unrest, the idea of neutrality becomes increasingly complicated for Geralt. As a Witcher, he has always prided himself on staying out of the conflicts of men, but Ciri's importance cannot be ignored. She is no mere pawn in a game of power. She is a force in her own right, and her actions will shape the fate of nations. Geralt is forced to reconsider his stance on neutrality, as he finds himself increasingly drawn into the struggles of the world around him. The decision to protect Ciri is no longer a simple choice. It is one that carries with it profound consequences for everyone involved. As Ciri's training intensifies, the connection between her and Geralt deepens. They share moments of quiet understanding, where words are unnecessary and their bond is palpable. Yet, even as they grow closer, there is a sense of impending danger that looms over them both. The forces that seek to control Ciri are relentless, and their pursuit will only intensify as her power grows. Geralt knows that he cannot protect Ciri forever, but he is determined to shield her for as long as he can. The weight of his responsibility presses on him, and the stakes become higher with each passing day. At the same time, Ciri begins to explore her own identity. She is no longer just a child, sheltered from the world, but a young woman with the weight of her lineage and her magical potential upon her shoulders. She grapples with her feelings of loss, her grief over the destruction of Sintra, and her sense of being pulled in many different directions. The expectations placed upon her are immense, and she struggles to reconcile her own desires with the demands of the world around her. In the midst of this struggle, the future remains uncertain. The forces of Nilfgaard grow ever stronger, and the power dynamics between the kingdoms are shifting. As Geralt and Ciri continue their journey together, they must confront the reality that the choices they make will not only determine their own futures, but the fate of the entire continent. The path ahead is fraught with danger, and the world is on the brink of a transformation that neither of them can fully predict. As Geralt and Ciri leave the shelter of Kaer Morhen behind, they set their sights on the unknown world that lies ahead. Though Geralt is resolute in his decision to protect Ciri, the journey is far from straightforward. The political climate across the northern kingdoms grows ever more turbulent, and they cannot remain in isolation for much longer. While Ciri is still learning the harsh realities of the world, Geralt's focus is equally split between ensuring her safety and navigating the dangerous waters of shifting alliances and the increasing unrest that grips the continent. The world outside Kaer Morhen presents Ciri with a stark contrast to the world she once knew. Gone are the idyllic days of playing and training in the isolated keep. Now, she is thrust into a world of intrigue, betrayal, and constant danger. Though she is no longer the naive child she once was, the weight of the expectations placed upon her feels crushing. With each passing day, the realization grows stronger that her destiny is tied to forces far beyond her control. Her magical abilities, though still unrefined, mark her as something more than human, and this distinction does not go unnoticed by those who seek power. Geralt, ever the pragmatist, takes his role as her protector with the utmost seriousness. He knows that the forces arrayed against Ciri will stop at nothing to either exploit her abilities or use her as a pawn in their games of political chess. He also knows that she is ill prepared for the complex web of politics that spans the kingdoms. His commitment to teaching her the ways of the world is unyielding, even though the path is fraught with difficulties. Their journey takes them through both the wilds of the continent and into the heart of political intrigue. Along the way, Geralt becomes increasingly aware of the extent to which Ciri's power is growing power that both fascinates and terrifies those around her. In the broader world, the Nilfgaardian Empire continues its unrelenting march toward dominance. The Empire's expansionist ambitions threaten to swallow up the northern kingdoms, and their growing presence casts a dark shadow over every decision that Geralt and Ciri make. The Imperial Court, which has long been a place of scheming and manipulation, is a place Ciri will inevitably be drawn to. The danger posed by Nilfgaard cannot be underestimated, and Geralt realizes that he must seek allies among the various factions of the north if he is to have any hope of keeping Ciri safe. One such potential ally is the sorceress Yennefer of Vengerberg, a figure from Geralt's past, who is known for both her formidable magical prowess and her complicated relationship with the Witcher. Though their connection is fraught with tension, Yennefer agrees to lend her aid, recognizing the significance of Ciri's magical potential. Yennefer's motivations, however, are not entirely altruistic. While she has no desire to see Ciri fall into the hands of Nilfgaard, she also has her own ambitions, ones that could prove to be just as dangerous as the forces that seek to harm the girl. Yennefer's presence adds an additional layer of complexity to Ciri's training, and the interactions between Geralt, Yennefer, and Ciri reveal the deep-rooted conflicts that exist between them. As the trio begins to form a fragile alliance, Ciri is further exposed to the nuances of power and manipulation. Yennefer's mentorship is both empowering and daunting. Though Yennefer teaches Ciri to control her magic with greater precision, the relationship between them is not without its own struggles. Yennefer's sometimes harsh methods push Ciri to her limits, and the girl's rebellious nature often clashes with the sorceress's domineering personality. Despite the tension, Ciri begins to see the value in Yennefer's lessons, understanding that survival in this world will require not just strength, but control over her emotions and her power. Amidst the turbulence of their training, Ciri also grapples with the emotional turmoil of her past. The loss of her family and her kingdom weighs heavily on her, and she often finds herself haunted by the ghosts of Sintra. Her identity remains tied to the shattered remnants of her past, and she cannot escape the legacy of her bloodline. Her grief and guilt over the fall of Sintra are ever present. And though Geralt and Yennefer both try to help her cope, there is no simple remedy for the deep wounds she carries. At times, Ciri finds herself torn between the world she once knew and the one she now inhabits, unsure of who she truly is or what her future will hold. Yet, even as she struggles with these emotional burdens, Ciri's growth as both a person and a mage is undeniable. She begins to grasp the complexity of the world she now occupies, understanding that the lines between good and evil are often blurred. Her power, once wild and untamed, is now something that she is learning to control. But as she learns to wield it, she also realizes that the price of that power may be higher than she ever imagined. The choices she will soon be forced to make will have far-reaching consequences, not just for herself, but for everyone around her. Geralt, meanwhile, is forced to confront his own feelings of inadequacy. Though he has dedicated himself to protecting Ciri, he cannot escape the haunting realization that he is not enough to shield her from the dangers that lie ahead. His decision to take on the mantle of protector comes with a heavy burden, and at times, he feels the weight of the world pressing down on him. Yet, despite his doubts, Geralt's love for Ciri is unwavering. He knows that, despite the odds, they must face the future together. No matter what happens, he will stand by her side, even as the world grows darker and more unpredictable. As the story unfolds, it becomes clear that the forces of Nilfgaard are not the only threat that looms over Ciri. Her growing power attracts the attention of other factions, some of whom view her as a potential tool to be used for their own ends. The prospect of such power is enough to send tremors through the world, and soon, Ciri's every move is being watched by enemies both known and unknown. Geralt's efforts to keep her hidden, to protect her from the dangers she faces, become increasingly futile as her destiny grows ever closer. The inevitability of Ciri's role in the grand conflict is something that neither Geralt nor Ciri can deny. Though they may fight against it, the world around them is moving inexorably toward a collision that will reshape the very fabric of their lives. As they make their way through the tumultuous landscape, they must contend not only with external threats, but with the internal struggles that threaten to tear them apart. The journey they embark upon is far from over, and each step they take brings them closer to the moment when Ciri's true potential will be realized. But with that realization comes the undeniable truth. There is no turning back from the path she is on. The events set in motion will change the course of history, and the fate of the continent rests on the shoulders of a young girl who has only just begun to understand her power. As Geralt, Ciri, and Yennefer continue their journey, the landscape around them grows ever more fraught with uncertainty. The northern kingdoms, already teetering on the edge of collapse due to internal divisions and external threats, seem to be hurtling toward an inevitable war. Nilfgaard's ambitions are no longer a quiet whisper in the halls of power. They are a thunderous march that threatens to engulf everything in its path. For Ciri, the stakes could not be higher, as her power and her destiny intertwine with the fate of the entire continent. Throughout this time, Geralt's protective instincts are in full force. His primary concern remains Ciri's safety, but this protection is becoming increasingly difficult. The world around them is one where allegiances shift with little warning, and even those who appear to be allies may have ulterior motives. With the Nilfgaardian Empire advancing southward, seeking to claim more territory and crush any resistance, Geralt knows they must tread carefully. They cannot simply stay on the run forever. They need to find a place of refuge, a place where Ciri can learn and grow without being hunted down by those who wish to exploit her. But finding such a haven proves elusive. The idea of seeking out the most powerful mages of the continent, those who might offer sanctuary or at least guidance, seems increasingly necessary. Yennefer's connection to the world of magic places her in a unique position, but her relationship with Geralt complicates the path forward. Although they share a deep bond, their past is marked by complications, and the future of their relationship remains uncertain. Yet, despite their personal differences, Yennefer remains committed to aiding Ciri. She knows that the girl's powers, her bloodline, her potential, are key to the survival of the Northern Kingdoms. Ciri's role in this tangled web of politics and magic is undeniable, though it is often a source of inner conflict for her. She has been raised as a princess, but her world has been shattered, and now she is thrust into a world that sees her not as royalty, but as a potential weapon. It's a bitter truth that she must come to terms with, especially as she grows more aware of the extent to which the forces that seek to control her are willing to go. The very thing that makes her special, her elder blood, also marks her as a threat to many, and her magic grows stronger with each passing day. As Ciri's power continues to manifest, she becomes more attuned to the energy that flows through her. Her training with Yennefer is intense and often overwhelming, pushing her to her limits in ways she has never experienced. Yennefer's harsh methods are sometimes difficult for Ciri to accept, especially as she tries to reconcile her rebellious spirit with the discipline required to control her burgeoning magic. There are moments when Ciri resents Yennefer's controlling nature, especially when the sorceress pushes her too far or uses her magic to manipulate Ciri's emotions. But despite the tension, Ciri cannot deny that Yennefer's guidance is invaluable. Slowly but surely, she begins to learn how to harness the untamed power within her. And with this control comes a growing understanding of the gravity of her situation. Yet, it is not only Yennefer's mentorship that shapes Ciri's development. The bond between Geralt and Ciri continues to deepen, becoming more than that of a mentor and his charge. Their relationship is a complicated mixture of parental love, fierce loyalty, and an unspoken acknowledgement of their shared fate. Geralt's protective instincts are sometimes at odds with Ciri's growing desire for independence. She knows she is not a child anymore, and while she appreciates Geralt's care, she also resents the constant need to be shielded from the world. Ciri is becoming her own person, and she wants to stand on her own, even if that means facing the world's dangers head-on. Geralt, for all his stoicism, sees the inevitable conflict in their relationship. His need to protect her is at odds with her need to grow, to understand the world on her own terms. Yet, despite the tension, he knows that he must trust her. As the group travels through the continent, they come into contact with various factions, each with their own motivations. Some seek to use Ciri's powers for their own ends, while others view her as a threat that must be eliminated. In the midst of this turmoil, Ciri begins to understand that the world is not simply divided into good and evil. Rather, it is a complex tapestry of conflicting desires, where everyone's motives are driven by something far more personal. It is this harsh reality that makes her question everything she once knew. The ideals of heroism and villainy seem increasingly irrelevant as Ciri witnesses firsthand the moral gray areas that define the world. One of the groups they encounter is the Scoia'tael, a band of elven rebels who are determined to fight back against the human domination of the continent. Led by the fierce and enigmatic Iorveth, the Scoia'tael are marked by their hatred of humans and their desire to return the elves to their former glory. For Ciri, who is neither fully human nor fully elven, the encounter is a reminder of the fractured nature of the world. She is seen by the Scoia'tael as a symbol of both the legacy of the elves and the dangers of human encroachment. This meeting forces Ciri to confront the complexities of identity, as well as the bitter truths about the history of the elves and humans. Meanwhile, Geralt continues to grapple with the deepening political crisis around them, though he has always maintained a policy of non-interference in matters of politics. He cannot ignore the escalating threat of Nilfgaard. The Northern Lords, each with their own ambitions, are weak and divided, unable to offer a cohesive resistance against the growing might of the Empire. The tensions between the Northern Kingdoms rise, and Geralt is drawn into a game of strategy that is far beyond his desire or expertise. He knows that the only way to ensure Ciri's safety is to align with those who are strong enough to resist Nilfgaard. Yet, this comes with a heavy cost. Trust is a commodity in short supply, and every alliance forged may come at the expense of another. At the heart of it all, the question remains: can Ciri survive the war that looms on the horizon? Is she a pawn in a game she cannot escape? Or is she the key to tipping the balance in favor of one side or another? Her fate is inextricably linked to the outcome of the war, and as she grows more powerful, it becomes increasingly clear that she will not be able to stay neutral. Her power, her bloodline, and her role in the ongoing struggle for dominance make her the most coveted and the most dangerous individual on the continent. Geralt's determination to protect her, despite the odds, is unwavering. He knows that the path ahead will be fraught with peril, and that even with the help of powerful allies, there is no guarantee that they will survive the coming storm. The world is changing, and Ciri's place in it is rapidly becoming the fulcrum on which the fate of the continent will pivot. All that is left to do is brace for the inevitable and face whatever consequences come with the choices they make. As Ciri continues to grow under the guidance of Geralt and Yennefer, she becomes increasingly aware of the weight of her destiny. The magic within her, that ancient and powerful force tied to her bloodline, is no longer something she can simply ignore. It defines her, shapes her, and is the source of both her strength and vulnerability. Her training with Yennefer intensifies as the sorceress pushes Ciri to her limits, teaching her not just how to control her powers, but also how to survive in a world that would seek to exploit her. Yennefer's methods are often harsh, pushing Ciri through grueling exercises meant to sharpen her control over her abilities. But there is more at play than mere instruction. There is a deep, unspoken bond forming between the two. Yennefer, herself scarred by her own past, sees in Ciri both a reflection of her younger self and a way to redeem the parts of her soul that have been lost to her over the years. It's this complex mixture of affection, manipulation, and shared understanding that makes their relationship so compelling. Yennefer wants to mold Ciri into a powerful force, not just for her own safety, but also for her role in the war to come. But Ciri, ever the rebellious spirit, chafes under the discipline and often questions whether this path is the right one. Ciri's confusion grows as she becomes more attuned to the complexities of her identity. She is not merely a princess in exile. She is a powerful and dangerous individual with a bloodline tied to ancient forces. Her ties to the elder blood are becoming increasingly clear, and with it, the terrifying realization that her destiny could bring both salvation and destruction. She has become something more than just Geralt's ward or Yennefer's pupil. She has become a symbol of something much larger. The fate of the world, it seems, hinges on her. Despite her growing sense of self, Ciri still struggles with the feeling of being a pawn. There are moments when she resents the way others perceive her, as a weapon to be wielded in a battle she never asked to be a part of. She yearns for the simplicity of her childhood, the days when she could run freely through the fields and forests of Sintra. But those days are gone, and the harsh reality of her situation is something she must come to terms with. Her power, her connection to the ancient forces of the world, cannot be ignored, and neither can the fact that many forces, some friendly, others not, are vying for control of her. This struggle becomes even more pronounced as they move through the continent, encountering the political machinations that threaten to tear the world apart. The Nilfgaardian Empire is marching inexorably toward the north, and the fractured northern kingdoms are in no position to resist. The war is no longer a distant concern. It is a looming, ever-present reality. Each day brings new whispers of armies gathering, alliances forming, and betrayals unfolding. The stakes are higher than ever, and with them, Ciri's role becomes even more critical. She is no longer just a princess or a child of prophecy. She is the key to the balance of power, the fulcrum on which the future of the world will pivot. Geralt, ever the reluctant hero, knows the dangers that lie ahead. He has lived his life by a simple code, one that eschews involvement in the affairs of kings and queens. He has always strived to maintain neutrality, to keep his head down and focus on what is immediately in front of him. But with Ciri's future on the line, he can no longer afford the luxury of neutrality. He is drawn into the web of politics, unable to ignore the larger forces at play. And as the world around them begins to descend into chaos, Geralt is forced to confront the uncomfortable reality that, for Ciri's sake, he may have to become more than just a solitary monster hunter. He may have to be a leader, a symbol, and a player in a much larger game. Despite his growing involvement in the political struggle, Geralt remains focused on his primary goal, protecting Ciri. He understands that the threats they face are not just physical. The danger is far greater. The people who seek to control Ciri are powerful, and they are willing to do whatever it takes to bend her to their will. This includes using not just force, but manipulation and deceit. Geralt is acutely aware of the dangers of magic and its ability to corrupt. And though he trusts Yennefer, he knows that her own motivations are not always aligned with his own. Yennefer, meanwhile, remains focused on her own ambitions. While she has come to care deeply for Ciri, her primary concern is not just the girl's safety, but the potential of what she could become. She is well aware of the political implications of Ciri's existence, and she understands that the girl's power may be the key to tipping the scales in the impending war. Yennefer's devotion to Ciri, while genuine, is also tinged with a sense of personal gain. For Yennefer, Ciri represents an opportunity to shape the world in her image, to redeem herself for the mistakes of her past. But this desire to control, to mold, also makes her blind to the dangers of pushing Ciri too hard. It's a delicate balance between mentorship and manipulation. And as Ciri's powers grow, it becomes clear that this balance may soon tip in ways none of them can predict. Ciri, for her part, grows increasingly frustrated with her situation. She is not a pawn to be moved around the board, and she knows that her life is not just for others to dictate. Her growing powers offer her an opportunity to take control of her destiny, to fight back against those who would use her for their own ends. But the path to freedom is fraught with peril. She must navigate a world where trust is scarce, and every decision has the potential to shape the future of the world. The more she learns about herself, the more she realizes that there is no escaping the destiny that has been thrust upon her. As the group continues their journey, they encounter more dangers, both political and magical. The world around them is on the brink of war, and every step they take brings them closer to the heart of the conflict. Ciri is now fully aware of her importance in the grand scheme of things, but with this awareness comes a deep sense of unease. The girl who once dreamed of adventure and freedom now understands the true cost of both. Her journey has only just begun, and the choices she makes in the coming days will shape the future of the continent. In the end, it is clear that Ciri's path will not be an easy one. She is destined for something far greater than she could have ever imagined. But whether that destiny is one of salvation or destruction remains uncertain. As the forces of war gather around her, and as the magic within her continues to grow, Ciri must confront the harsh truth. Her future, and the future of the world, rests in her hands. The only question now is whether she will be able to seize control of her destiny, or whether the forces around her will consume her before she has the chance to do so. Ciri's journey is increasingly marked by uncertainty and danger as the world around her descends deeper into chaos. As the influence of the Nilfgaardian Empire continues to spread, the North finds itself caught in a precarious position. The fragile alliances between the kingdoms are on the verge of collapse, and the looming specter of war threatens to engulf everything Ciri holds dear. She is no longer just an observer in these events. She is at the center of them, her very existence influencing the course of history. The pressure on Ciri intensifies as the reality of her powers grows ever more apparent. Yennefer's rigorous training has sharpened her abilities, but it has also instilled in her a sense of unease. Ciri is beginning to grasp the true magnitude of her potential, but she is still uncertain of how to control it. The magic inside her pulses with a raw, untamed force, and it is this power that makes her both a beacon of hope and a target. Everyone from sorcerers to kings, from warlords to power-hungry factions, wants a piece of what she represents. Yet, no one seems to consider Ciri's own desires, her autonomy. She is trapped in a web of manipulation, with each thread pulling her in a different direction. As she trains with Yennefer, Ciri begins to understand the sorceress's deep-set insecurities. Yennefer, once a haughty and seemingly impenetrable figure, begins to show cracks in her carefully constructed armor. She confesses her own struggles with her past, how she was born in poverty and sacrificed her humanity in order to gain the power she now wields. She seeks redemption, and in many ways, she sees Ciri as a means of achieving it. However, this need to control Ciri's destiny often clashes with the girl's need for independence. While Yennefer's love for Ciri is genuine, it is also burdened by her own past and ambitions. She is so determined to shape Ciri into something that will ensure their survival in the coming storm that she sometimes overlooks the girl's own desires, pushing her too hard. Ciri's relationship with Geralt also becomes more complex during this period. Though he remains fiercely protective of her, Geralt struggles with his role as her guardian. He has long been a solitary figure, disconnected from the world of politics and magic. But now, with Ciri at his side, he is forced to engage in these matters in ways that are unfamiliar to him. The monsters that once defined his world now seem small compared to the political machinations of kings and emperors. Yet, his moral compass remains intact, even as the world around him seems to lose its bearings. Despite Geralt's best efforts to shield Ciri from the complexities of the world, she is becoming more aware of the reality she faces. She sees the growing tension in the north and the fear in the eyes of those around her. People speak in hushed tones about the approaching war, and Ciri knows that her role in it is far from passive. She is the granddaughter of the former Queen of Sintra, a woman whose bloodline is tied to ancient magic and prophecy. Her connection to the Elder Blood, an ancient and nearly mythical force, has already marked her as someone of great importance, and now the world is beginning to take notice. As Ciri grows into her powers, she starts to realize that there are no simple answers to the questions that plague her. She cannot simply choose to walk away from her fate, nor can she ignore the forces that seek to control her. She is caught between two worlds, the world of magic, where she is being trained to harness her power, and the world of politics, where her lineage makes her a valuable and dangerous player. Both worlds are pulling at her in different directions, and she is left to wonder if there is any place for her to stand on her own. The conflict surrounding Ciri deepens as the Nilfgaardian Empire marches relentlessly northward. The Emperor, Emervarum Reyes, is a man with vast ambitions, and he sees Ciri as the key to solidifying his rule over the continent. His interest in her is not just as a princess or a pawn in the political game. He understands the true power of her bloodline. The Elder Blood, the source of her magic, is the very thing that could give him control over the future of the world. He will stop at nothing to capture her, to bend her to his will. As Ciri comes to understand the significance of her powers, she also begins to grapple with the moral implications of her situation. She is not just a victim of circumstance, she is a force in her own right. And with that force comes the potential to shape the world for better or for worse. The more she learns about herself, the more she becomes torn between the desire to use her abilities to protect those she loves, and the fear that doing so will only make her a weapon in someone else's hands. Her growing sense of agency is complicated by the fact that she is being pulled in different directions by those around her. Geralt wants to protect her at all costs, but his protective instincts often clash with her need for independence. Yennefer wants to guide her, to help her control her magic, but sometimes her desire for control overshadows Ciri's own autonomy. Even the political forces that surround them, kings, sorcerers, and emperors, are all seeking to manipulate her for their own ends. Ciri's journey becomes one of self-discovery, of understanding the true extent of her powers and the responsibilities that come with them. She begins to realize that she is not just the result of a prophecy or the heir to a fallen kingdom. She is her own person, and her decisions will have far-reaching consequences. The weight of her destiny is not something she can ignore, but it is also not something that can define her entirely. She must learn to navigate this complicated, often treacherous world, while also finding her own path. At the same time, Ciri must also confront the deep-seated fears that have been with her since her childhood. The trauma of watching her home fall to the Nilfgaardians, the loss of her family, and the ongoing threat of violence all weigh heavily on her. She is constantly reminded that she is living in a world where survival is not guaranteed, and where trust is a rare commodity. But through it all, there is a spark of hope in Ciri, a determination to carve out her own future, regardless of the forces that seek to control her. As the continent braces for war, Ciri's role becomes ever more crucial. She is not just a symbol of the past, but also a key to the future. The Elder Blood, with all its power and potential, could be the world's salvation or its destruction. And as the stakes rise, so too does Ciri's understanding of the immense responsibility that comes with her power. The path ahead is fraught with peril, but it is one that Ciri must walk if she hopes to shape her own fate and the fate of the world around her. As the world around Ciri becomes ever more unpredictable, her journey grows even more dangerous. The shadow of Nilfgaard looms large over the continent, and the political machinations of kings, sorcerers, and warlords continue to escalate, as if everything hinges on Ciri's existence. But the girl with the Elder Blood is more than just a piece in this vast, sprawling game of power. She is a person with thoughts, fears, and desires that often seem to be at odds with the roles others try to impose on her. Geralt's protective instincts are put to the test as Ciri becomes more aware of the weight of her bloodline, her powers, and her importance in the grand scheme of things. He is constantly torn between his role as her protector and his desire to let her grow into her own person. For all his wisdom, Geralt knows that he cannot shield her forever from the world's cruelty. Yet, his love for her remains unwavering, and he is determined to guide her through the storm of events that threaten to swallow them both. Yennefer, too, remains an integral part of Ciri's life, her presence a mixture of care and control. The sorceress has done her best to teach Ciri how to master her powers, but the relationship between them is fraught with tension. Yennefer, as much as she loves Ciri, cannot escape her own insecurities, her own need to control. She sees in Ciri a reflection of her own past, a life she has worked so hard to escape, a life where power was the only way to assert herself. But Ciri is not Yennefer, and her journey will not be the same. There is a constant struggle between the two women, each pushing the other to be something they are not. For Ciri, the conflict is becoming clearer. She cannot be someone else's idea of who she should be. Her powers, her destiny, her very life, these are hers to control, or at least to try and control. But with every step forward, she finds herself trapped in a web of expectations. She must be the warrior, the savior, the princess, the symbol of hope or destruction. The pressure is overwhelming, and she begins to realize that the very thing that has made her so powerful, the elder blood, is also what sets her apart, isolates her from everyone she loves. She is a figure that others can only look at with awe, fear, or desire. And yet, in the midst of all this, there are moments where Ciri catches a glimpse of herself, not as the prophecy or the heir to Sintra, but as a person in her own right. There are fleeting moments of peace when she can just be herself without the weight of the world on her shoulders. But these moments are brief, and they always end with a reminder of the dangers that surround her. Her connection to Geralt and Yennefer remains a source of strength, but it also becomes a point of conflict. Geralt and Yennefer, despite their deep bond with each other and with Ciri, often disagree on how to raise her, how to guide her through the dangers of the world. Geralt wants to protect her from the worst of it, while Yennefer, with her more pragmatic view of the world, understands that sometimes protection can be a cage. Ciri feels torn between these two perspectives, caught in the middle of the people who love her, but who also, in their own ways, limit her growth. Meanwhile, the world outside grows darker and more dangerous. The Nilfgaardian Empire marches forward, its armies sweeping through the north with brutal efficiency. Emervarim Reyes, the Emperor of Nilfgaard, continues to search for Ciri, believing that her bloodline holds the key to his empire's domination. He knows of her importance, not just as the granddaughter of the late Queen Callanth of Sintra, but as the bearer of the elder blood, an ancient and powerful magic that could change the fate of the world. Ciri is increasingly aware of the dangers she faces. Her powers are not just a gift, but a curse. They make her a target, and those who seek to control her will stop at nothing to bend her to their will. The more she learns about the world, the more she realizes that she is not a passive player in this game. She is at its very center. Her decisions, her actions, will have consequences that reverberate across the continent. One of the most striking aspects of Ciri's development during this time is her growing awareness of the complexities of power and control. She has learned from Geralt that the world is not simply divided into the good and the bad, the powerful and the weak. The lines between these categories blur constantly. Throughout her journey, she encounters people who have been broken by power, who have used it to destroy, and who have sought it for reasons that are not entirely noble. She sees firsthand how power corrupts, how it consumes those who seek it without understanding the toll it takes. Her relationship with the world of sorcery is similarly complicated. She admires the power of sorcerers like Yennefer, but she also understands the cost of that power. Sorcerers are not merely gifted with magic. They are often bound by their own desires, their own fears. They make sacrifices, sometimes enormous ones, in order to hold onto their power. Yennefer, in particular, embodies this paradox. Though she is a woman of immense strength, she is also a person haunted by the choices she has made. The more Ciri learns about the complexities of magic and power, the more she begins to understand the delicate balance that must be maintained in order to survive. As the tension between Nilfgaard and the northern kingdoms grows, Ciri is forced to confront her own identity, her own place in this fractured world. She cannot remain neutral, cannot simply retreat from the chaos that surrounds her. Whether she likes it or not, she is a part of something much larger than herself, a war, a prophecy, a world in upheaval. But even as she faces these overwhelming challenges, she finds herself questioning the very things that have defined her life, her bloodline, her powers, her role as the heir to Sintra. What does it mean to be the bearer of the elder blood? What does it mean to be the key to the future? In the end, Ciri's journey is one of self-discovery, of coming to terms with who she is and what she is capable of. She is not just a symbol or a pawn in the political games of kings and sorcerers. She is a young woman struggling to find her place in a world that is constantly shifting beneath her feet. Her path will not be an easy one, but it will be hers to choose. Whether she walks in the shadow of the prophecy or forges her own destiny is something only she can decide. But one thing is certain, the world will not be the same once she has made that choice. As the days stretch on, Ciri's internal conflict deepens, and the pressure of her destiny weighs heavier on her shoulders. The world continues to churn with political strife, the flames of war flickering in every corner of the continent. And yet, Ciri's personal journey becomes even more pivotal. It is no longer merely about surviving the encroaching darkness. She has come to understand that she must confront her own identity, the very core of who she is and who she is meant to be. The prophecy, the elder blood, the forces of Nilfgaard, and her role as the heir to Sintra, these things cannot be ignored. But in the quiet moments, when the chaos subsides, Ciri wonders whether she can ever truly escape the weight of expectations placed on her. Her relationship with Geralt and Yennefer becomes even more complex as they continue to shape her development. For all of Geralt's protective instincts, Ciri feels the stirrings of independence, the desire to break free from the shackles of being viewed solely as the Witcher's ward. She has learned from him his sense of justice, his ability to navigate the morally gray areas of the world. But now she begins to forge her own path, one that is uniquely her own. At times, she seeks solace in his presence, finding comfort in the steady, unwavering bond they share. Yet other times, she pulls away, determined to prove she is more than just a girl in need of protection. Yennefer, too, plays a crucial role in Ciri's evolution. The sorceress, with her sharp wit and unyielding drive, has taught Ciri much about magic, about power, and about the struggle for autonomy in a world that tries to impose its own limits. But Yennefer's relationship with Ciri is fraught with contradictions. Yennefer's motivations are often clouded by her own desires for power and control. And while she loves Ciri deeply, she has an inherent need to see Ciri become more than just a child to be protected. This tension between the two women, the desire to guide Ciri and the fear of stifling her, is palpable, with both of them struggling to balance affection with the harsh realities of their world. Despite the nurturing forces around her, Ciri begins to realize that she must carve her own future. And this understanding brings with it a newfound sense of agency. The time for passive observation is over. Ciri will no longer wait for fate to simply unfold around her. She begins to make her own choices, and while the consequences of these decisions may be far-reaching, it is clear that she is no longer willing to be a mere pawn in someone else's game. But this realization comes at a cost. As her independence grows, so too does the isolation she feels. She is still the bearer of elder blood, still a target for the forces of Nilfgaard, and she is increasingly aware of the delicate nature of her position. She is caught between worlds, the world of Geralt and Yennefer, which she has known since childhood, and the vast, uncertain future that lies ahead of her. Meanwhile, the politics of the continent continue to churn relentlessly, with Nilfgaard's empire pressing forward in its relentless pursuit of power. Emhyvar Emreis, the Emperor of Nilfgaard, has made it clear that he will stop at nothing to claim Ciri as his own. The forces of Nilfgaard, relentless and calculating, are not just focused on conquering the northern kingdoms. They are also after Ciri's bloodline, believing it to be the key to ultimate power. The elder blood she carries has the potential to unlock ancient and powerful magic, a power that could change the very course of history. Ciri knows this, and she feels the weight of it as she comes to understand just how much of her life is no longer her own. But as the war continues to spread, Ciri's powers begin to grow stronger, more uncontrollable, and more dangerous. The magic that courses through her veins is not something she can simply ignore. It is a part of her, and it is becoming harder to control. The threat of Nilfgaard is not just external, it is internal as well, as Ciri grapples with the potential of her own abilities. She begins to realize that she may not be able to stop herself from becoming the very weapon that others fear. Her powers are both a gift and a curse, an inheritance that marks her as both a savior and a destroyer. She knows that no matter how much she wishes for a simpler life, she is tied to this destiny, this fate that has been thrust upon her. In the midst of these growing tensions, Ciri begins to encounter other individuals who seek to manipulate her for their own ends. The sorcerers of the world, once allies of Geralt and Yennefer, have their own agendas, and they see Ciri as a means to further their power. The political leaders of the North, too, are more than willing to use her for their own gain. In every direction, Ciri faces pressure from those who view her not as a person, but as a tool. But as she learns more about her own powers, she also learns about the limits of control. She knows that she must become more than what others want her to be. She cannot simply be a weapon to be wielded in the conflict between Nilfgaard and the North. She must become her own person with her own agency. Despite the chaos and uncertainty that surrounds her, Ciri finds moments of clarity. She understands the importance of her connection to Geralt and Yennefer, but she also understands that these relationships cannot define her completely. She is not a mere reflection of their desires or their fears. She is her own person, capable of making her own choices, even if those choices lead to uncertain and dangerous paths. The battle for her soul is as real as the war raging across the continent, and she knows that she cannot remain passive in the face of it. The challenges that lie ahead are daunting, but Ciri is no longer the same girl she once was. She is not the frightened child who was swept into this world of magic, politics, and war. She is becoming something more, someone with the power to shape her own future, for better or for worse. The road ahead is uncertain, but it is one she will walk on her own terms. And in doing so, she may find not only the answers she seeks, but also the freedom she craves. As the threads of fate continue to weave themselves around Ciri, the contours of her destiny become more and more complex. The battles of the continent, both internal and external, rage on. And Ciri is no longer just a passive figure caught in the storm. She feels the weight of her heritage more profoundly than ever, the elder blood within her surging with newfound power and unpredictability. She is beginning to understand the depth of what she must face. There is no escaping the reality of the forces that seek to control her. The relentless pursuit by Nilfgaard, the dark truth of her abilities, and the ever-present shadow of prophecy that looms over her like a dark cloud. It's clear that the path she is on will not be a simple one. The choices ahead will be fraught with danger, betrayal, and heartbreak. But Ciri is learning to trust herself, to embrace her own power, and to see beyond the expectations others have placed upon her. Her relationship with Geralt, which has always been one of protector and ward, is evolving. It is clear that Geralt cares deeply for Ciri, but as her powers grow, and as she begins to step further into the world as an individual, their dynamic shifts. Geralt's instinct to protect her clashes with her own desire for autonomy. He understands the dangers she faces, the complexities of her magic, and the enemies who would stop at nothing to control her. But he cannot protect her from the inevitable confrontation with her own identity and her destiny. For Ciri, this moment of independence is both liberating and painful. She can no longer simply be the girl who needs saving. She has learned too much, seen too much, and feels the urgency of forging her own path. In many ways, Geralt's internal conflict mirrors her own. He has been a father figure to her, guiding her through a world of uncertainty. But he, too, is haunted by the fear that his protective instincts may have kept Ciri from truly understanding the gravity of her position. Geralt knows, as well as anyone, that Ciri is not just any girl. She is the key to the future of the continent, and her abilities, her very existence, could reshape everything. But no matter how much he wants to shield her from the world's cruelty, he knows that there are forces in motion that will not allow her to remain untouched by destiny. The weight of this responsibility is heavy on both of them. And while Geralt wants to shelter Ciri from pain, he also knows that she must face the truth, even if it means experiencing heartbreak and loss. Yennefer, too, continues to be a powerful influence on Ciri. Their bond, though complicated, is one of deep mutual respect and affection. Yennefer's own history of striving for power, for autonomy, mirrors Ciri's journey in many ways. Yennefer understands the allure of magical power, but she also recognizes the danger that comes with it. She knows better than anyone that magic is not a cure-all. It can create as much suffering as it alleviates. As Ciri's powers grow, Yennefer becomes both a guide and a warning. She wants Ciri to harness her power, to learn to control it, but she also fears the darker potential that lurks within her. The tension between them is palpable, but there is also a deep understanding between the two women. Yennefer may be demanding, and her love for Ciri may be layered with her own fears and desires. But it is clear that she has never seen Ciri as merely a child. Ciri's transformation into a woman of power and agency has always been Yennefer's ultimate goal, even if that goal brings its own set of challenges. As Ciri contemplates her future, the political landscape of the continent grows ever more precarious. Nilfgaard's empire is relentless in its pursuit of power, and the forces of war press closer to the northern kingdoms. But Nilfgaard's goal is not simply conquest, it is Ciri. Her bloodline holds the key to an unimaginable power, and Imhervar Imraze, the Emperor of Nilfgaard, is determined to claim her, no matter the cost. The political and military struggles of the North are more than just about land or armies. They are about the control of Ciri herself, and she becomes both a pawn and a queen in the ruthless games of power. Ciri's bloodline, a mixture of royal heritage and ancient, powerful magic, is the key to unlocking untold forces. Her destiny has never been clear, and every new revelation about her powers only adds more uncertainty to the equation. While she has learned to use her magic, she is still far from mastering it. The elder blood within her is ancient, and its potential is vast and dangerous. In her hands, it could either save the world or destroy it. The more she uncovers about the world of sorcery and the people who seek to control it, the more she understands that the line between good and evil is often blurred. The forces that seek to use her as a weapon are as dangerous as those who would destroy her. And Ciri is beginning to see the world not just as a battlefield, but as a place where alliances are fragile, and trust is a commodity in short supply. While Nilfgaard's plans unfold with relentless precision, Ciri begins to realize that she is not just a passive observer in this war. She is an active participant in the fate of the continent. The elder blood that flows through her veins has the potential to change everything, and she must decide how to wield this power. It is a terrifying realization for her, one that forces her to confront the truth of who she is and what she must become. She has always known that her path was destined to be different, but now she is starting to understand the full weight of that difference. Her power, her bloodline, and her place in the grand scheme of things have made her a target. She cannot simply run from her destiny. The time for passive acceptance is over. Now she must decide how to shape her future. Ciri's journey is one of self-discovery, but it is also one of loss. As the world around her shifts and changes, so too does the woman she is becoming. Her childhood innocence has long since faded, replaced by a deep awareness of the world's complexities. The people she loves, the people who have guided her, are all struggling with their own demons. But Ciri's journey is not just about surviving. It is about embracing her own power and learning to navigate the treacherous waters of a world at war. She knows that, in the end, her choices will define not only her future, but the future of the continent itself. The forces that seek to use her will stop at nothing to get what they want. But Ciri is determined to chart her own course, no matter where it leads. As the story of Ciri continues to unfold, the complexity of her journey intensifies. Throughout Blood of Elves, the deepening political unrest and war-driven struggles of the northern kingdoms against Nilfgaard serve as the backdrop to the personal transformation of the young girl who was once only a ward of Geralt of Rivia. Her ties to the elder blood and the prophecy that surrounds her cast a shadow over every decision she makes. Yet, it is not just external forces that shape her destiny. It is her own choices, her growing awareness of her own power, and the responsibility that this power brings. The tension between her need for autonomy and the unavoidable reality of the world's expectations of her escalates, pushing her closer to the pivotal moment where she will no longer be able to hide from the truth of who she is. The political tension between the northern kingdoms and Nilfgaard reaches new heights with the threat of full-scale war hanging over the entire continent. The Emperor of Nilfgaard, Emervarim Reyes, has set his eyes firmly on Ciri. Her bloodline is too valuable to ignore, and the prophecy surrounding her makes her a key figure in his expansionist ambitions. The northern kingdoms, led by leaders who often lack unity, must now face the threat of Nilfgaard's imperial expansion, not just in terms of territory, but because of the dangerous implications of Ciri's role in the larger geopolitical scheme. While Ciri remains hidden from the broader political machinations, the reality of the situation is that her existence alone could tip the balance of power in unimaginable ways. Her adoptive father, Geralt, is torn between his duty to protect her and his desire to give her the freedom to make her own choices. He knows that keeping her safe from the world's violence and from the powerful factions that seek to manipulate her is nearly impossible. Geralt has always been someone who prides himself on being a neutral force in the chaos of the continent, a monster hunter who doesn't take sides. But with Ciri, he is forced to confront a new type of battle, one that cannot be fought with sword and steel. Protecting her requires more than just keeping her out of harm's way. It means giving her the tools to understand the very powers that are awakening inside her. Geralt's role in Ciri's life has always been that of a protector, a mentor, and a father figure. But as Ciri's abilities grow stronger, his relationship with her begins to shift. He no longer holds the same certainty that he can shield her from the dangers that lie ahead. Geralt knows the brutal truth. Ciri will have to face her destiny, and he can't always be the one to save her. The relationship between them, though grounded in deep love and affection, now carries an element of sadness, as Geralt realizes that his protective instincts may only delay what must come to pass. Yennefer, too, plays a significant role in Ciri's development. The bond between them is one of complexity and depth. Yennefer, the powerful sorceress who has faced her own struggles with identity and magic, sees much of herself in Ciri. Both women have faced losses and betrayals, and both have had to grapple with their power in a world that seeks to control it. Yennefer sees Ciri's potential, but she also fears the very thing that makes Ciri so special, the untapped, wild magic of the Elder Blood. She knows that magic is a double-edged sword, capable of both immense beauty and unimaginable destruction. Her guidance is vital, though it is often tinged with harshness, as she pushes Ciri to understand the gravity of what she must face. But it's not only Ciri who is changing. The very world she inhabits is evolving, swept up in the currents of war and power struggles that seem to grow ever more desperate. Nilfgaard's relentless march toward the north is only the most obvious aspect of the conflict, but beneath the surface, the political landscape is fractured, with leaders jockeying for power, kingdoms torn apart by internal strife, and alliances formed and broken with astonishing speed. These upheavals create an environment where survival becomes the primary concern, and power, true power, becomes an almost mythical ideal. For many, Ciri represents the embodiment of that power. In the midst of this, Ciri's understanding of her own role becomes clearer. She realizes that she is not just a pawn in a greater game of politics. She is part of something much larger, a force of change in the making. The prophecy that once seemed like a distant, abstract idea now seems increasingly inevitable. She may not be able to control the forces that are shaping her fate, but she has the ability to decide how she will respond to them. Her agency, her capacity to choose her path, becomes the defining theme of her journey. No longer can she simply hide away from her destiny. She must embrace it, no matter how frightening it may be. Ciri's internal conflict continues to build as she struggles with the expectations placed upon her by Geralt, Yennefer, and the world at large. The weight of her heritage, the knowledge that her very bloodline has the power to change the course of history, often feels suffocating. At times, she wishes she could run from it all, lead a normal life, free from the threat of prophecy and war. But she understands, deep down, that such a life is no longer possible. Her magical abilities, once dormant, are awakening in full force. She can no longer ignore the truth of who she is, nor can she avoid the terrifying realization that her power will either save or destroy the continent. The choice, in the end, is hers. By the close of blood of elves, Ciri is standing at the precipice of her future. The conflict between the northern kingdoms and Nilfgaard is reaching its zenith, and the choices she makes will have far-reaching consequences. She is no longer the scared girl she once was, the one who fled her destiny. She is becoming the woman of power she was always meant to be. But with that power comes sacrifice, and Ciri is learning that she may not be able to control everything in her life. She can only control how she responds to the choices that are before her. The final moments of Blood of Elves leave Ciri poised on the edge of her destiny, no longer passive but active, ready to face the coming storm. The threads of fate that bind her to the continent are unraveling, and Ciri's own path is more uncertain than ever. What is clear is that she is no longer simply a girl caught in the crossfire of war and politics. She is a force to be reckoned with, and the world will soon know the full extent of her power. As the events of Blood of Elves come to a close, the real journey for Ciri is just beginning. Blood of Elves stands as a pivotal moment in the Witcher saga, marking the transition from Geralt's individual adventures to the larger, more complex story of destiny, power, and the intertwining fates of its characters. Through Ciri's journey, Andrzej Sapkowski paints a rich tapestry of political intrigue, personal growth, and moral dilemmas. The novel explores deep themes of power and responsibility, the burden of prophecy, and the ways in which individuals shape their destinies despite overwhelming forces seeking to control them. At its heart, Blood of Elves is not just a tale of magical battles or political schemes. It is a story about identity and the choices that define us. Ciri's development from a frightened girl into a young woman discovering the full scope of her powers is the emotional core of the narrative. Her struggle with the expectations placed upon her by Geralt, Yennefer, and the world itself is a mirror of the greater struggles unfolding around her. The intricacies of her relationships with those who care for her, most notably Geralt and Yennefer, offer a human anchor amidst the storm of larger, more impersonal conflicts. Geralt's role as a father figure to Ciri is central to the novel's emotional tone, highlighting his complex relationship with duty, love, and sacrifice. His struggles to balance his protective instincts with the reality that Ciri must face the world on her own are a testament to the weight of responsibility that defines his character. Similarly, Yennefer's guidance of Ciri, while at times stern and distant, is a powerful reminder of the sacrifices that come with power and the challenges of mentorship in a world fraught with danger. Their collective efforts to prepare Ciri for what lies ahead underscore the fragility of their personal lives in the face of the impending war and chaos. The political tension between Nilfgaard and the northern kingdoms provides the backdrop against which these personal stories unfold. The threat of war is ever present, and Ciri's position as the key figure in the conflict only deepens the stakes. Her elder blood, imbued with incredible power, becomes a symbol of both hope and fear for those who seek to control it. The revelation that she may be the fulcrum upon which the fate of the continent pivots further emphasizes the novel's central themes of fate versus free will. Throughout Blood of Elves, Ciri must confront the harsh truth that her bloodline makes her both a weapon and a potential savior, a duality that shapes her understanding of her own identity. Ultimately, Blood of Elves challenges the notion of destiny as something immutable, suggesting that while forces beyond the individual's control can influence their path, it is still up to the individual to make meaningful choices. Ciri's growing awareness of her power and the realization that she must face the consequences of those choices forms the backbone of the narrative. The novel leaves us at a precipice, with Ciri poised to take on a more active role in shaping the future, even as the shadow of war looms ever closer. The significance of Blood of Elves lies not only in the deepening of its characters, but in the larger philosophical questions it raises about the nature of power, the inevitability of change, and the personal cost of embracing one's destiny. As a reader, we are left reflecting on the idea that no matter how much we try to control our fates, the world is often far more unpredictable, and sometimes the greatest challenge is accepting that the forces shaping our lives are much greater than ourselves. As the first novel in the saga dedicated to the rising tension that will define the fate of the continent, Blood of Elves serves as an essential bridge. It establishes the foundation for the series' greater narrative arcs, both personal and political, and positions Ciri at the heart of a world on the brink of catastrophe. It is a story of growth, of struggle, and of embracing a destiny that seems both terrifying and inescapable. As the series progresses, the choices made in this book will resonate, proving that every action, every decision, and every sacrifice contributes to the larger, ever-unfolding narrative of the Witcher universe. In conclusion, Blood of Elves is not only a key chapter in Ciri's story, but a powerful exploration of the human condition, wrapped in the fantastical elements that define Sapkowski's world. It is a book about the complexity of human relationships, the burdens of power, and the quest for self-understanding. As Ciri steps into the unknown, we too are left on the edge of our seats, eagerly anticipating the next chapter in her journey and the unfolding of a world teetering on the brink of war.